This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
This week I'm continuing my series of exploring unique ways to use concrete to create furniture, and I'll be making a round concrete river coffee table in that same Urban Decay style as the table I built at Thanksgiving last year. And first up, making the melamine form. I need to cut my form into a circle before the concrete pour, and to do that I'm just going to use this piece of scrap plywood. Now I've drilled 2 holes in it 15 inches apart. I'll screw that down to the tabletop, mark out that 30-inch diameter circle, take it over to the bandsaw and cut it out.
I'm using my bandsaw for a couple reasons. 1, I have a good bandsaw, it's already set up and ready to go. And 2, I broke the blade of my jigsaw the day before cutting up some pallets. That said, a jigsaw works just as well for making this cut. Next, I cleaned up any rough edges with my sander.
Alright, so I've got the circle cut out and now I need to create the sides of the form. And in order to do that, I'm going to use this bendable hardboard strip that I got in the concrete section at the home center. Now, I can just wrap this around the form, cut it to length, and then use a ratchet strap to hold it in place. And then I can get the rest of the form ready for the pour.
After getting the hardboard attached to the melamine, I can mark the excess I need to trim and then cut that with a handsaw. Here I reattached the hardboard and discovered I'd cut it just a bit short. No worries though, I just used some tuck tape to fill this gap. I'll add some wax to the form and then apply silicone around the edge. The wax is going to help the concrete release from the form, and the silicone gives it a nice round over. To create that round over, I'll use this fondant ball tool and run it along the edge. Using some foam insulation, I'm sketching out the shape of the river section and then cutting that out with a razor. I'll cut it to mimic a live edge slab similar to what's used in a traditional river table. This knockout also serves as the support for the rebar grid that I'll add during the pour. It also saves me from having to chisel out so much concrete. I attach it to the center of the form with a couple dabs of hot glue and then added a bead of silicone around the edge.
Okay, so I'm almost ready to do the concrete pour, but before I do that, I've got to add the rebar. Now, the rebar is there to give the tabletop added strength, but it's also going to be that visual detail that will be exposed once I chisel out that river section. I've got to figure out what my pattern's going to be, weld it together, and then I can get to the pour.
After laying out this tight grid pattern, I welded all the rebar together. And you could totally build this project without any welding if you just wire the rebar and use something like a set of hairpin legs for the table base. Okay, with the rebar grid ready, I can get to the concrete pour, and I'm using Quikrete 5000, which is inexpensive and easy to get. First, I dumped the dry mix into a mixing trough and then added water and used a garden hoe to mix it until I got a lumpy oatmeal-like consistency. Then I can start shoveling the mix into the form. I added all of the first 80-pound bag and then placed the rebar into the mix, working it down into the concrete and resting it on top of the foam cutout. I mixed up about half of a second bag, and once it was all combined, I shoveled in the mix and covered up all the rebar. And I ended up with a slab that was a little under 2.5 inches thick. I used the hoe to tamp the mixture down into all the edges and then even out the underside of the pour. Next, I came back with a mallet to vibrate the form and get rid of any air bubbles before switching over to a reciprocating saw without a blade to vibrate the sides of the form. And last, I covered up the form with a sheet of plastic to hold in the moisture and slow down the cure time, which makes for a stronger slab.
All right, it's been a couple days and this thing's been curing. I'm excited to get it out of the form and see what I'm working with. Let's do it.
While I'm demolding the concrete slab, I want to talk real quick about the sponsor of today's video, and that's Squarespace.
Whether you're a maker like me, run a business, have a blog, or just need an online portfolio, Squarespace is the all-in-one place to build your website using Squarespace's award-winning website design. Squarespace has beautiful templates that allow you to create your amazing website with no website design experience needed. And you can browse those templates over on the Squarespace website and preview them until you find the one that's right for you. I actually created my website using Squarespace 2 years ago, long before they were a sponsor, and trust me, it's so easy to use. You want to sell products? Well, Squarespace has all the e-commerce tools you need to get your business off the ground. Need to put on a class or a workshop? With Squarespace, you can add online booking and scheduling. Want to go mobile? With Squarespace, each design includes a mobile version. And now let me show you how easy it was to list this concrete table for sale on my website. I just add a new product to my commerce inventory, upload a picture, write a short description, hit publish, and now I have a new product for sale. Head over to squarespace.com/JohnnyBuilds to check out your 14-day free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com and use code JohnnyBuilds for 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks, Squarespace.
Okay, I've got the slab out of the mold and everything's looking really good. I used the chisel to remove the foam knockout, and don't do what I did here and use a nice chisel for this. It was seriously the only one I could find. I had to get the slab lifted up off the ground and onto this work table by myself. And you know what they say, right? Lift with your back, not your legs.
All right, so the next thing I need to do is to chisel out the rest of that river section all the way through the concrete slab and expose all the rebar. Now to do that, I'm gonna use a hammer and some of these chisels. But before I get to the hammer and chisels, I'm gonna use this guy right here. This is a rotary hammer drill with a 1/2-inch bit. This is made for drilling through concrete. And I'm gonna hog out a lot of the material and drill a lot of holes. What that's gonna do is it's gonna remove a lot of that material initially, but it's also gonna create a lot of weak spots. So as I'm hammering and chiseling on all of this, I'm not creating those stress points that are gonna cause big cracks to go through the rest of the slab. Or that's the theory. It worked on the last table I did like this, so I'm gonna do it again. Okay.
As I started drilling these holes, I realized I was able to remove the majority of the river cutout using just the drill because of how tight of a grid pattern I made using the rebar. After a few holes were drilled out in a section, the rest of the concrete in that section would also just break away. Now I'm going to use a hammer and a masonry chisel to define the edges of the cutout. The foam leaves a sharp line where you can tell there was a foam cutout, and chiseling all the way around this edge gives the piece a more natural, organic look. And after defining the edge, I can work on the rest of the cutout with a hammer and chisels. Okay, moving on to the table base, I'm making this one using a 3-legged design made entirely of 1.5-inch square tube. I cut 3 pieces for the cross supports and 3 pieces for the legs on my metal chop saw and cut 30-degree angles on the cross supports. The pieces get welded together 120 degrees apart on each side to create a full 360-degree support for the tabletop.
All right, I've got this thing all welded together, and now I need to cut it to size to fit the slab. I intentionally cut these a bit oversized so that I could just cut them at this point and have it match the slab exactly. I could have used the dimensions from my drawing, but oftentimes the finished piece and your drawing can be a little bit different. And this way you save a whole bunch of math. So I just need to cut these to match the table. I'm gonna add about 1/8 of an inch to give myself a little bit of wiggle room and then weld on the legs.
A quick note here, I labeled each arm 1 through 3 and then marked the matching number for that support arm on the underside of the concrete slab so I could line them up later and keep this orientation. The legs are going to cradle the concrete slab within the base, and I used some 2-inch spacer blocks to lift the support arms while I welded each of the 14-inch legs in place. Where the legs come together up alongside the slab, I'm going to cut in an angled detail on top of the leg using my angle grinder. Next, I could close up that section I just cut away by welding on some flat bar. I heated up the flat bar with a pair of torches and then hammered it down into place along that angle. The last part of the table base is adding some caps to the bottom of the legs with more 1.5-inch flat bar.
Okay, I'm calling this one done. Now, my original design called for a lower stretcher. I was gonna make it out of this flat bar, bend it through like that. This doesn't need it. I think there comes a point in your design where you start adding too much. This lower stretcher would have been it for this piece. It looks really good like it is. It doesn't need it for any sort of stability on the lower part of the legs. These welds are really strong. One of the benefits of having a 3-legged design is it doesn't wobble. There's no wobble through this table. When you add a 4th leg, then you get that wobble. And as far as the welds and supporting the concrete slab, this thing is really strong, and I'll show you. It's good.
I used this wire wheel attachment on my angle grinder to remove all the mill scale from the table base. I'm going to use a steel blackening patina on this piece, and it's important to get rid of all the scale and grease beforehand, so I use this degreaser to clean everything up. I'm using this Presto Black steel patina, and you just brush it on. I'll leave a link for this and everything else I use in the build down below. And here you can see just how quickly this stuff works if you've prepped the steel correctly. And last, I use some paste wax to finish the steel, and it also darkens the black patina even more. I cleaned up any residual concrete on the rebar and applied a concrete sealer to the tabletop. Now all that's left is to put this concrete river coffee table together. This piece came out super clean and I'm really digging it. I like how something this unique and sturdy can be made with such inexpensive materials that are also easy to get. Like I said, if you don't have access to weld something like this, I would just wire the rebar together and use something like hairpin legs for the base.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I've got another video I think you'll enjoy queued up right here and here. Also, I've got a whole bunch of cool projects coming up on this channel, so make sure you get subscribed by clicking here and ring that bell so you get notified. Also, if you watch to the end, comment this. Okay, thanks for checking this one out, and I'll see you back here next time.